Hey everybody, we're going to give it just a few moments and let people trickle in. It's 1:59. We'll probably start up at about 2:02, 2:03, and that is Eastern Standard Time. Not typically one of those people to pull my phone up, especially when I'm on a meeting, but as I was getting ready for this meeting, I kind of looked and saw that we had some fun social media posts. So I'm gonna kind of go over one of these and answer them while we're waiting for people to trickle in. So we posted the best hosting advice from fellow vacation rental hosts. And this is our teammate Farah going through and picking out the ones that she likes the most. Number one was run it like a business, unless you're a charity. Makes a lot of sense. Number two, never break your own rules. Number three, expect everything in your house to get broken, ruined, or stolen. A little pessimistic outlook for me, but I understand where that comes from. Then we have most people are good people who want to do the right thing. Absolutely true. But people are quirky, and the range of normalcy is a very wide spectrum. Absolutely agree. Another really good piece of advice. Sometimes you got to say no. Then treat people how you would want to be treated. So thank you all again for joining us. I'm going to give it another moment or two to let everybody else trickle in here, and then we will get started. Hope everybody's having a wonderful day. Hopefully nobody's too tired from attending the master classes and getting a little bit out of this. Right, so once again, I am Kyle. I'm your host today. This is our High Five 5-day masterclass. Today is day 4. We're going to be doing a performance check now. So we're going to look at how to boost and how to measure success. One of the elements we're going to look at is kind of how to track and analyze within PriceLabs. We're also going to look at revenue maximization and how to adjust for market changes. So thank you all so much for joining us today. As with the other days that we've had with the masterclass, if you want to chat with amongst yourselves, please use the chat. We don't really monitor that too much. They will be dropping a few things in there, but if you have questions, please put those in the Q&A area that we can get to them. Hopefully everybody's had your questions answered so far. If you have any that come up today, just put them in Q&A and we'll get to them. All right. So kind of following the same format as we have, we're going to start with some of those questions that came before we even started our masterclass. And this one's really important, and it's how do I measure or feel confident that PriceLabs is working? There's a couple of ways that we can do this. The first one, and I think you can probably pick up, I've got kind of a smart aleckness personality a little bit, but I've been at so many conferences where somebody's got their phone and the ringer's on and you hear the ching, 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 ching. You're getting those bookings. You're seeing the emails coming in, things like that. That's the number one thing you can look out for. If you start seeing a little bit of an increase in that, it's fantastic. In terms of actually coming in here in PriceLabs and identifying your properties and how it's performing and kind of things like that, we covered on day 2 a little bit about our metrics and what you have available. So we talked about, I like to add last book date so I can kind of look at it. So I can kind of look at it and make sure that I know that I'm getting bookings fairly regularly. We talked about market penetration index a little bit more as well. If you want to learn more about market penetration index, go back and watch day 2, where I define it a little bit better. I want us to focus on some of the easier ones, the ones that will really help you identify today. So what we've got here, I'm going to slide on over so we can look at it. Everybody kind of starts with this total occupancy, next 7, next 30, next 60. You can customize these. And to me, that is the first thing you kind of want to do when you get in here and you want to start looking at how PriceLabs is performing. So when you come here, you can hit add metrics. All of these can be moved around. So if you want to move them, just grab this little guy and reposition how you want to. But for the sake of this, I'm going to come down and I'm going to hit the add metrics button or add metric button. And then you can see we've got all of these options over here. So I've got total occupancy. We talked about that. That does include any blocks or owner stays in your occupancy figure. Got adjusted occupancy. That one does not include your blocks or your owner stays. If you want to learn more about that calculation, you can come hover over the I, or you can go back and watch our day 2 masterclass where I kind of dove into these a little bit more. The one I'm definitely going to suggest for you all to come in and select though is going to be last book date, which we've already done. So if you don't have last book date on there, go ahead and click that one and add it. I'm going to give you just a few seconds to come back, and then we can look at some of these other ones. Just one moment. All right. If you have not, or if you've added last book date, another one that I would add is either nights booked or booking pickup, depending on how you would prefer to look at it. Do you want to look at the total amount of reservations that you've gotten or the total amount of nights within those reservations? So what I'm going to add is I'm going to say, how many nights have I gotten booked over the past 15 days? That's going to help me identify very, very quickly, hey, is this property performing? Another one that you can look at if you don't want to do nights and book pickup, we talked about that market penetration index. Please go back and look at day 2 if you want to learn a little bit more about that. But we're going to add bookings pickup also over that next or that past 15 days. One suggestion from my side, this isn't necessarily a PriceLabs thing. I would always try to keep things together. So if you're looking at this in past 15 days, look at this as in the past 15 days as well. Also, if you're trying to figure out, hey, how are we booking over these past 15 days? You could come in and say, let's look at my total occupancy also over these next 15 days. So we're looking at how have we performed in the past 15 days? What does my occupancy look like just over the next 15 days? That would be a really good little setup for you to kind of come in and look at. So you would have your last minute or your last book date, be able to identify very easily if it's been booked recently. How many nights have been booked over the past 15 days? How many bookings did it take to get those nights? And then how is your occupancy in comparison to the market over the next 15 days that are coming up? So I'm going to hit update changes and we will see that these will update for us. We also can dive into this area up here, which is called portfolio analytics. Hopefully I've got time for that today. We'll look at that a little bit later, but that is a great area for you to kind of help look and see how you're performing and things like that as well. So now we've got our last book date here. You can see I haven't been booked since May 29th. I want to go look at that property right now. If I look over here, buddy, sky's the limit is booking like crazy. I got 73 nights booked in the past 15 days. I've got 9 bookings over the past 15 days. This one is churning and burning. It's getting the bookings. So I know this one's performing well. These, it's not performing well. So the first thing I'm going to do when I see something like this is I'm coming over here, hitting review prices. I'm hitting help me choose a base price. And I'm seeing if PriceLabs has a recommendation for me. So right now you can see here, my recommendation, I'm not performing whatsoever. My recommendation is to go from this 192 down to 182. So I'm going to accept that. You also see that market base is at 179, but if you are using PriceLabs, I would say always follow this recommendation because it's going to get you where you need to be. All right, so with that one, question number 2 was what metrics would I look at? So the main metrics that I want you all to look at, and if you take away anything from today, let's focus on getting your last book date. And let's focus on getting in whichever frame you want. Maybe it's 7 days, maybe it's 15 days. I like 15 days because it's around 2 weeks, but let's put on either nights booked or bookings pickup. That way you can watch and see if something's coming in. All right, so the next question we've got is going to be about revenue maximization and how can I balance occupancy with revenue so that I maximize profits? And this is one of those things that PriceLabs is really, really great at, and it does it for you. So when we talked about the algorithm over the past few days, and we talked about how you had seasonality, you had the demand factor where we're looking and seeing if people are booking, um, those are going to be the factors that really, really help you out. What PriceLabs is constantly trying to do is find the optimal rate for each day. So during peak season, we're going to be really trying to get you a higher rate the further out that we are, but not too high. We don't want to push you, through the roof. Sometimes you may have a rate that's a little high that's more of a protective type of a measure. But generally speaking, your rate's going to be optimal so that we go after high occupancy at a high rate during peak season. And then when we're identifying that the seasonality is low, the demand's low, then your pricing is coming back, I would say coming back to reality, so to speak, and trying to get you as much occupancy as you can. So if you are in a market and let's say it's low season, most property managers are going to finish about 20% occupied. You can pretty much know that PriceLabs is going to be chasing it least 50% occupancy trying to get you up there. Not just going to undersell to get you 100% occupancy. I go on little speaking tours and things like that across the US. And I've got a buddy that works with Gessie. His name's David Angotti. And he said, if you want 100% occupancy, it's the easiest thing in the world. Just put your price at $1 and it'll be 100% occupied. You don't always want to get that 100% occupancy. You want optimal occupancy. And then, one of the good things about PriceLabs is if you are not achieving what you want, all you've got to do is make a quick adjustment and that will start processing for you. So, all right. Next question we've got is, what minimum stay settings should I apply based on the booking windows and stay duration of my market? Where do I see this? And then is there any type of rule of thumb, for how to do this? And I think with PriceLabs, the rule of thumb is going to be going in and looking at your minimum stay recommendations. So when we come into our listing, let's stick with the Chicago listings because that's what we've been looking at all week. So I'm going to come in here. When I come to edit customizations right here, got stay restrictions. When I go to stay restrictions, all I need to do is come to the setting suggestions available. I can click it, do my short terms, go. Now, this is going to be specific to your market. It's going to change around. So if you do this exact same thing, you probably may not see this. This is for Chicago. If you are in Paris, it's going to be something totally different. If you are in Abu Dhabi, it's going to be something totally different. If you are in the Smokies, something totally different that is based off the market patterns that we're picking up. So if you don't know what you want to do, you want good direction, 100% go with this suggested minimum stay settings. If you want optimal exposure, if you always want to show up on people's searches, things like that, you can go in and say, I want a 1 night minimum length of stay. That is not ideal for optimal revenue because your calendar can get really messed up. It is ideal for optimal exposure and being out there and always showing up in searches, but that's not always going to translate to making the most money. You do want some types of restrictions so that especially if you're protecting your high days and the busier seasons and things like that. So my suggestion for minimum stay settings, if you don't know what you want to do, really, I would say let's just go ahead and start with this, even if you do know what you want to do, and give it a try. Let's do prefer short term, hit go, and once again, you have this full recommendation up here. When we see this area and it says due to different seasonal demand, we suggest creating separate seasonal settings for the months of January, and it shows you this big old thing, February, this big old thing. Ignore this until you feel comfortable enough with PriceLabs. This will work for you. 100%. It's going to protect you in January and February as well. Don't worry about this just yet. If you have this pop up and you have any questions about how to apply this, please reach out to support@pricelabs.co. They will help you import this into your seasonal profile. Once again, you don't have to do these seasonally. You can just stick with this one, and that is my recommendation for you all. Just stick with what you got here. As you become more advanced with PriceLabs, you can come in and start changing things up a little bit if you want to. All right. Once again, visibility. If you want to be seen on Airbnb and all of that stuff, every single time somebody searches in your area, you can go for a 1 night minimum length of stay. It's not going to result in optimal revenue. It's going to result in optimal visibility for you. So, all right, next question. And this is the most asked question. It came up basically like every 2 or 3 questions, and it is, how do I maximize my revenue and how do I know I am earning to my full potential? Then I don't want this to sound like a cop-out answer. You're already taking the right steps by using a tool like PriceLabs. As long as you don't get in and turn a bunch of stuff on and make it go wonky, you're going to be in good hands. You are just going to really need to focus on your base price, making sure your minimum stays are in there. Follow those recommendations, just like when we looked at my property over here in Tennessee, and we went with that base price recommendation. We went from 192 to 182. Now what's happening is PriceLabs is saying, hey, we're going to make this move. We're going to start getting you a little bit more activity and bookings that way. So the next So after following your recommendations, ask for help if you have any questions. We have a great support team. And when I say that, I truly believe in this team. We love having people that are knowledgeable of the product. We don't have anybody that's just a customer service rep that doesn't know what PriceLabs is. So if you send an email to support, whoever's responding to you has been trained and understands the tool and can really help you. So ask questions. That's my number three suggestion for how to maximize revenue and things like that. The next one is going to be to stay on top of your education. You don't have to learn a ton of new stuff, but PriceLabs is always releasing new features, new ways, and improving our product. So anytime that you ever want to learn something about that, just come over here. If you feel like you might be missing something, you can look at guides, you can look at the trainings and things like that. If you logged in today, early on, you probably saw a little pop-up that was like, hey, check out our August webinars update. It's a 2-minute video. Always watch those if you get a chance. It's kind of cool. You'll get to hear myself and my teammate Becca in complete AI form. It's my voice, but not me talking. But those things will really, really help you understand what PriceLabs has done and how your life can be a little bit easier as well. The next suggestion I have is ask questions. If you have a question about something, please don't hesitate to reach out to PriceLabs. We are here to help you. I think one of our greatest assets is that support. Please ask questions if you have any about it. I would also suggest, to make sure that you're maximizing revenues, kind of staying on top of things, get active in communities. If you have, I'm personally not very active on Facebook, but when I do get on there, I kind of hit up some Airbnb groups. There are Price Labs groups out there where users talk and bounce ideas off of each other, kind of talk about best use cases and things like that. Um, Try to get out there and, talk to people, whether it's, conferences or on the internet, and just, pick each other's brains. I think our industry is great about people trying to help each other, especially when we look at hosts. If I've got two properties and you've got two properties, even if we're in the same area, we're not really competition. We both want to have that third property. We both want to get to the fourth property. So talk to people in the industry. I've never had anybody that I've talked to give me bad advice. Once again, the next one, ask questions. Please, if you have any questions about PriceLabs, reach out. I'm going to be done with talking about support now and kind of move along to our next question. Our next question is, how do I stay ahead of these market trends and make the necessary adjustments? I don't want to sound like a broken record, but PriceLabs does do it for you. All you need to do is make sure that you are paying attention to the metrics we talked about: last book date, nights booked, booking pickup, and your total occupancy numbers. If those are not performing in the way that you want, very simple. Come in, let's check our base price, see if anything needs to be moved, because once we make that adjustment to the base price, all of the other stuff that PriceLabs does is going to move our rate to where it needs to be. And I did hop into the bad Chicago listing, the one that says not the limit. That's going to be the ultimate suggestion. You can also go where we showed, or where I showed you yesterday real quick, where we came into the individual listing and we went to neighborhood data right here. So I'm looking at our Chicago listing. Here's neighborhood data. I click on that. Give this just a moment to load up. So once again, we're not going to spend a ton of time in here. I don't want you all to feel overwhelmed looking at the graphs, but I'm going to come down to the compare competitor calendar area. Going to have these in here. And then I can use this to kind of observe what's happening with my competition that I've selected. You don't have to actually know these if you don't want to. You can just pick people around you and kind of go based off of that. This is a really good place for you to kind of monitor and see, hey, is there anything that's happening in the market? This is going to be the more manual way of doing it, so to speak, and just kind of coming in and looking at some properties. You can also come up here to portfolio analytics, and you have this KPI and historic reports area. We're not going to spend a ton of time in here today. We have lots of videos on portfolio analytics, so if you want to do some side learning outside of the masterclass, I would definitely suggest hitting that up. But we're going to pretend like I click here and I am actually going to open up a completely different analytics that has really good data for us. So if I want to come in and I want to see how I'm performing or how the market is moving around and things like that, I want to know if I'm performing well. All I've got to do is come here, portfolio analytics, KPIs, and historic reports. You have this very easy to digest key performance indicators area. Anything below this is probably going to be a little tough to deal with. So if you want to, you can look at some of the graphs, but don't feel overwhelmed with it. This is the area that's going to benefit you the most as a host. So we can come in and say, I want to look at, let's see how this quarter's performing versus the same time last year. And say, hey, my revenue is up big time. My occupancy's down a little bit. That kind of makes sense, but my ADR is up. Got a decent amount of listings. You can look at your KPIs here, come in here sometime and just click around and play, and you'll learn that you can really see some cool information in here when it comes time for comparing your property and seeing how it performed versus either before PriceLabs or just versus last year or things like that. All right, so trying not to go over on time here. The next question we have is, what should I do if bookings slow down unexpectedly? The reason for booking slowing down unexpectedly is most likely going to be rate or minimum length of stay driven. So let me flip back over here, up, and get back to my dashboard. So the first thing, just like when we started today and we saw that the property in Knoxville and the property in Breckenridge had zero booking pickup, we had no nights booked, we had nothing in there. What you need to do is first, we're always going to check that base price. Go see if there's a recommendation in there, just like how we have this nudge right here. I don't even have to go in and click that, click the base price help tool. I can just come and say, yep, this one's not performing. Give me that recommendation. You will have that nudge pop up just like we did over time. It's not always going to be there, and it's usually if it's more than a 5% increase or decrease, as we're suggesting, you'll see that base price nudge. You can also come in and change your minimum stay settings if that is the issue. So let's say we come in, you don't have this base price nudge. We don't have a recommendation to change your base price. Maybe you'll need to change your minimum length of stay settings. All you got to do is come back to your review prices and let's check that minimum stay engine again. Maybe something has updated in there, and then go about it that way. So go back to stay restrictions, and then we've got our setting suggestions here. You can check there. One other thing that you can do is looking at, get back. So when we were talking about the neighborhood data, I don't want to spend too much time on these graphs, especially on the future prices one, because I think it can be a little overwhelming at sometimes for hosts. But occupancy, I think, is really, really important to understand. And what we're looking at once this loads up fully, you can see the red line right now. That is where the market is occupied right now. This doesn't take into effect or doesn't really take in your property. What we're looking at is just the market. And if I come up here and I hit add last year data, it's going to pull in some additional lines. So we've got this big one up here. If you look down here, you can see I can turn that off. So I'm going to turn it off. That's where it ended last year, where the market ended. What we're looking at right now, the red line, is where our market is at as of today. The gold, or I'm sorry, gold. The gray line up here is where the market was at as of today last year. So we can see when we come over and hover over this for Saturday, September 14th, the market, or I'm sorry, yeah, let me get back to Saturday. Saturday, September 14th, the market is 11% down. That kind of helps me understand like maybe why my pricing is, or why my bookings are slowing down. PriceLabs is going to help you in that situation though, because when we identify that demand is down, your rates will start coming down and you aren't going to have to manually intervene. If the bookings are slowing down, what you should expect is most likely the bookings will start coming a little bit later. Not to get super nerdy or data analysty on you or anything, but that is a huge trend in the United States right now. For our international viewers that are on the call today, you're probably seeing some increases and things like that. But specifically in the US, we're seeing a lot of booking window changes to where people are booking at a later time. A lot of that has to do with supply and demand and things like that. But this is a good indicator that you can come in and look at and say, hey, okay, my market's down. I know PriceLabs has got my back and they're going to start dropping my pricing for me. That's all you really need to do. So with that, we are going to wrap up today's session and head over to some Q&As, which it does not look like we have a ton of Q&A. So that is pretty interesting. All right, so Gail, could you review market penetration index? Since we've got a little extra time and not a ton of questions, I am going to go ahead and just hit this up and share it. So when we look at market penetration index, that number is your occupancy divided by the market's occupancy. And what that means is it gives you a much easier number to kind of look at. So let's say you are at 50% occupied, the market is at 50% occupied. Your market penetration index is going to be 1 because you are parallel with the market. If you are, 100% occupied, the market's 50% occupied, your market penetration index is going to be much higher. It's going to be a 2. And what that's going to indicate is essentially very quickly, are you beating the market within this date range? So with this one that I've got pulled up, which I wish I could get over it a little bit quicker. So I've got market penetration index based on the next 30 days. My Sky's the Limit property has a market penetration index of 1. That indicates over the next 30 days that I'm right in line with market. So basically, I don't have to go in and change anything if I don't want to. If you see this number, see how we're at a 0 on this one? That 0 indicates, hey, buddy, your pricing's not good. So let's do something with it. It helps you identify you probably need to go down on your base price, most likely. Meanwhile, if this 1 is a 2, you need to look, one, if there's a little bit of context. If you get long-term bookings and the rest of your market doesn't, you don't necessarily need to change anything. Let's say you're just short-term bookings and your market penetration index is much higher than the market, round a 2, let's say a 1.7 to a anything above a 2, that indicates you probably have an opportunity to make a little bit more money. So you could potentially go up on a base price if it's that much higher. If you're sitting there at anywhere between like a 0.7 and a 1.5 on market penetration index, just leave it as is. You don't need to move too much on it, I would say. So hope that helps, Gail. All right. Chad asked, did he already go over seasonal settings? I've been here all days and don't remember him going over it. Chad, I have not gone over seasonal settings. That's something that I intended on covering, but as we kind of got into the masterclass and was getting some feedback, felt like we were kind of going a little over the top with some of the customization talk. Um, if if my teammates don't mind, if you would, could we try to get the link for next week's advanced customizations webinar and just put that in the chat? Chad, I think that would be the best for us to look at when it comes to seasonal profiles, not necessarily bringing it into the master class, because we do think seasonal profiles are going to be more of an advanced customization. But if you're able to attend that, would love to have you. I don't believe I'm teaching that one next week, but one of my fabulous teammates in the US will be teaching it. So I would definitely take a chance at that. All right. Gail says, I heard you say to get seen, put your minimum stay at 1 day. Is that correct? Please review. That is correct if visibility is your goal. So if you have a minimum stay that is just 1 night all the way across your calendar, no matter what happens when somebody searches on Airbnb, you're probably going to be able to show up. So let's say you have a 5-night minimum length of stay, Gail, but I come in and I search your market and I say, I want to stay Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You may not show up in that sense. So if your goal is to get maximum visibility, you would want to have a 1-night minimum length of stay. If your goal is to get maximum revenue, you would want to have something similar to what we're recommending in our recommendation engine, to where it's a little bit more tiered, to where you may get a further book or a longer booking further out, and then not necessarily get down to those 1-night bookings until maybe 7 to 20 days out or something like that. And hello, Ashley. If your booking lead time is 2 weeks, would that tell you to not start to lower your price until 2 weeks or less? I don't think that that's necessarily what you would be looking at. What you would look at with that booking lead time at 2 weeks is that you should 100% have your optimal rate within 2 weeks of the stay. So you don't want to necessarily start lowering there. I wouldn't take that as the indicator. I would take it as we need to be at that right price by then, which is one of the things that PriceLabs does in helping you get to that. All right. Natasha says, if my occupancy is 10% higher than the market, but yet I haven't had any new bookings in the past week, should I be concerned and still consider lowering my prices? That's a really, really good question. I, without the context and being able to actually look at it, I don't want to give you one way or the other. One thing I will say though is if your occupancy is already higher than the market and you're not getting any bookings right now, there's always that possibility that maybe your availability is just not what the market is looking at. You may not necessarily want to lower your prices. You may have already gotten booked out for the days that they're looking at today, but maybe what you have available is what becomes what people are looking at tomorrow or the next day. So you don't necessarily need to go in and start lowering your prices if your occupancy is performing really, really well. What I would say is if your ultimate goal is to get 100% occupancy, that could be a train of thought. So, Natasha, you could go in with like a daily override and say, I want 100% occupancy, so I'm going to go ahead and do this. You could do something like that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to. Right. Roger, returning the question 2 days ago, I'm trying to get about 80% occupancy, 3-day minimum stay. This means 24 days rented. Higher price gives me lower occupancy, but maybe more RevPAR. Lower price gives me higher occupancy, maybe less RevPAR. Richie on Short Term Rental Academy had the idea that 80% occupancy was the optimal price revenue proportion. Is this right? Do you have a formula? There's a lot in there. I don't think there's a exact answer. Um, I think what it comes down to is what you need. What Obviously we want to get 100% occupancy at the best rate possible, but that's really not in the cards. Um, so I don't think there's a good answer to that question. Um, as a revenue manager, I always knew that I wanted to get 70%. That was what was in my head. Even if it's low season, what did I have to do to get low season to get my properties booked up to 70%? But that was strictly because of what I was being told from bosses, things like that. It really depends on what you're wanting to achieve yourself. So we're going to answer just a few more questions live. And any other ones we will get in there and email to you. So let's see. Jane says, what percentile of the market price do you recommend we price at? It's a really good question. To start, let's just stick with the 50th percentile if you don't know very much about your property. If you know certain things about it, if you've been using all PriceLabs for a little bit, use the recommendation in there. But if you're initially starting, I would say just go with that 50th percentile, especially if you're not super, super familiar with revenue management. You may end up with one booking that you're like, oh, dang, that stinks. But once that booking comes in, you're going to be able to change your setting, obviously go in there and really, really make an impact. When you see that, we'll end up having a recommendation that says, well, that stinks. We selected this base price first. It got booked really quick. So let's go up on your base price for all the other subsequent dates and things like that. Da, da. Nikki says, if I'd like guests, we're answering that one via text, so that's good. Jane asks, what should MPI number be at? Ideally, you want to be at anywhere between a 1 and I would say a 1.5. 1 is in line with the market. That means you're probably getting good rates and getting good occupancy. I'm a little what's the word? Not, I'm a little money hungry, I guess, when it comes to revenue management. So I would always say that I would want to be higher than the market, but as long as you were at least at a 1, you're good to go. All right. Sherry asked if I could read the message in chat. Unfortunately, I can't read anything in chat. There's a lot going on in there. Anytime you have a question or anything, please put it in the Q&A for us. Tiffany, should I add MTR to my PriceLabs or is it only good for STRs? I love that question, Tiffany. And I think the correct answer for you is going to be bring those midterm rentals into. We have the settings for you whenever you set up to basically have it come in. So if I'm in here, let's look at Sky's the Limit. I hit edit and I go over and I look at my stay restrictions, kind of what we were talking about before. I hit setting suggestions and I say I want midterm. So now my settings are for midterm. Hit apply and customize. Good to go with that. Right. see. And then one more. Amy says, is there an option to reach someone via phone on the support team? If so, what is the phone number? Amy, unfortunately, we do not offer phone support. And I know it can be kind of confusing or kind of a pain in the backside, but the reason we don't offer phone support is because it's so much easier for all of us, including you, the user, to do a screen share and us figure it out very quickly for you. If we're on the phone and having to go back and forth looking at computers and things like that, there's a lot that can be lost in translation. So if we do a screen share or something like that, you'll be able to really, really get in there and figure it out quickly and get you all set up for success. Throw one more in there. And I'm just going to scroll, close my eyes, and pick one. All right. Mark says, how do I update the bedroom count on PriceLabs if it does not match the Airbnb bedroom count? Oh, that was one that I don't particularly know the answer to right off the top of my head. I'm not going to lie to you. I have done this multiple times, but off the top of my head, I don't know the answer to that, Mark. If you don't mind, let us respond to you. There should be a very simple configuration that's just not on the top of my head right now. All right, folks, I'm going to wrap it up today. We do have plenty of questions. Thank you all so much for